So I've been living in my Ford Transit Connect for about 4 months, and I make and sell jewelry while I travel. I've been in San Diego for 2 months, and I met my friend Bella while I was here. She also lives in a van, so we decided to take a road trip up the West Coast. The only goal is to see as many cool things as possible, so here's how it went. So our first stop was Santa Barbara, and right away we actually met up with some people that we were friends with on Instagram. We had never met before in person, so this was our first time meeting, but it was so much fun and we clicked instantly. The common denominator was that we all live in vans and have cameras and are interested in filming, so we talked about that. We talked about a lot of other things too. I also got to give them a ring lesson, which was really fun because I've never taught anyone before this, and I got to show them just a little bit of what I do. We ended up hanging out for about 3 days, which doesn't sound like a long time, but we low-key got pretty close, so it was hard to say goodbye. We were excited to continue our road trip though, so 3 days later, we said goodbye and we continued to head up the coast. When we left Santa Barbara, we started driving towards the Sequoia National Park. And oh my word, this was the most beautiful drive I've ever driven in my whole life. At this point, we were just driving. We didn't have a destination. So we found a random coordinates on one of our camper apps, and it said good camping site near river. So we drove to it, and it was like miles up a mountain. We lost service right away, and we got there kind of when it was dark, so we didn't have a ton of time to explore. The drive was really steep, and we were really secluded, so it was kind of creepy, and I don't think I would have gone here if I wasn't with Bella. But we decided to just make a fire, make dinner, and we had a lot of excitement for the next morning because we just had no clue what was around us. The next morning, we were actually speechless. The area we were in was insanely beautiful. There was wild sage everywhere, and we went on a little walk and we found these giant pine cones. We also saw this like crazy lookout. It was a whole bunch of purple flowers and then a perfect view of the mountains. It felt like we were in the sound of music, and we just laid there and talked for a while, and it was just so peaceful. We got back to our campsite, and then we found a waterfall that was right next to where we were camping, but we couldn't see it because of where our vans were parked. 3 days later, we decided to leave this spot, but I swear we were in like a Disney movie. It felt so perfect. We weren't on our phones at all, and I definitely want to go back here sometime. So Big Basin, aka the Redwoods, was our next stop, and last time I was here it was beautiful, and this time I literally cried because apparently there was a really big forest fire here and it burned most of the trees down, and you could like feel the energy in the forest. Like it felt like a graveyard, and honestly it was just like a really sad experience. We had originally planned on staying there longer, but we only stayed one night because of just like how depressing it felt. We also couldn't find any good camp spots, so we kept driving. We stopped at the Golden Gate Bridge. We also just really wanted to get to Oregon at this point, so we pretty much drove for hours and hours. We stopped at one spot to sleep and then just kept driving. Yay, thank you. More life, better service, less nightmares. After hours of driving, we finally made it to Oregon, and we were greeted with the most beautiful river I have ever seen. We saw some fish jump out of the water. To put it lightly, we were excited, and it was definitely a bucket list moment. Being in Oregon, it felt like I was like in the movie Brave. I don't know why I keep referencing Disney movies, but it was just so green, and like I was like looking for the bears. We got to our next camp spot, which would soon be our new home because we ended up staying here for quite a few days.
Making banana pancakes, pretend like it's the weekend now. And we can pretend that all the time. Well, can't you see that it's just raining? There ain't no need to go outside. Baby, you are the
So now that we finally made it to Oregon, we had one mission and one mission only, and it was to find as many waterfalls as we possibly could. Watson Falls was the first hike that we did, and it was really calm. It really wasn't that big of a hike. We were camping in the Umpqua Forest, I think that's how you say it, and there are like 7 waterfalls within that vicinity. Every couple miles there's like a new trail to a new waterfall. So we made it our goal to hit at least 2 a day. The weather was really inconsistent though, so some days it was raining and we wouldn't go out. And one day it was snowing, and we definitely stayed in our vans. So after a few days of camping, we actually got stuck. Well, Bella got stuck. Her van just wouldn't start, and we tried so many things to get it to start. We looked up every code. We looked up any possible issue. We tried jumping it multiple times. We could not figure out the problem. And we were about an hour and a half from the nearest town. We ended with the conclusion that her key needed a new battery. So we took a 3-hour trip to town to buy a battery, and thankfully when we got back, somehow we got her vehicle started. I love these. So after we got stuck in the Umpqua Forest, we hit a few more waterfalls and we decided to keep driving. We were excited to get to Bend, Oregon because we heard a lot of good things about this town. We found a camp spot about a mile away from the town and it was perfect. I had to get some work done. I had to ship out a few rings, But when I woke up, it was snowing, but I didn't really have a choice, so I pulled out all of my ring making stuff and started finishing some of my orders. I love traveling, but I also want to be a full-time artist, so I have to prioritize both art and traveling, which is not easy. It's actually very difficult. Life would be simpler if I just had a studio somewhere and stayed there forever, but that's not an option to me, so I'm going to keep finding ways to run my business and also travel at the same time. So our Oregon trip was coming to an end and we were about to head up to Washington when we decided to do this last minute hike. This was kind of our last waterfall excursion. This hike was called the Trail of 10 Falls, and it has 10 waterfalls within the span of an 8-mile hike. I would probably recommend this to everyone. It was such a cool hike. There were a lot of younger kids on the hike too. I would consider it family friendly. You could walk behind a lot of the waterfalls, which was really cool. I don't know why I like waterfalls so much. I mean, apart from the obvious, I feel like when I stand beside them, I just feel super small, and it puts a lot of things into perspective. And I definitely felt that on this hike because some of the waterfalls were just huge. The only negative thing about this hike was it was super muddy and kind of slippery. We hiked with our cameras the whole time, and my tripod is so heavy I ended up having bruises on my shoulders at the end. Out of all of the waterfalls, my favorite one was the last one. We got to sit behind it, and we had these Trader Joe's sesame honey roasted cashews. I will never forget. They tasted so good. We just sat here, ate cashews, and yapped, and so I will never forget this moment.